They mocked me for arriving in a taxi at the family reunion, calling me broke. But when I pulled out the real estate contract, they fell silent. My name is Zoya, and I'll never forget that day. I still remember standing outside that grand mansion, the one my uncle insisted on hosting the reunion in, chandeliers, marble floors, tall glasses with names I couldn't pronounce. I'd arrived in a taxi that had a torn seatbelt and smelled like burnt rubber. Before I could even take a step inside, I heard them, my cousins, my aunt, even my own sister, laughing, whispering, loud enough to make sure I'd hear. She probably begged for that dress. Is she still working at that bookstore? Must be nice not having a real job. I'm surprised she even showed up. What did she bring? An old sandwich.
And you know what I did?
I smiled. Not a fake one. A quiet, knowing smile. They didn't know that just 36 hours ago, I signed something that would change my life. But let's rewind to the start of that day. I woke up in my tiny studio apartment. The kind where the shower sings when you turn it on, and the walls are thinner than paper. I'd just finished paying off my student loan 3 months ago. I'd been working 3 jobs, managing a dusty bookstore, tutoring kids online, and helping clean airbnbs on weekends. My hands always smelled like old paper or bleach. But I had one secret. A dream. For 2 years, I'd been saving every penny I could. No outings, no makeup, no birthdays. Just pure focus. I wasn't flashy. I didn't post about it online. And I never told my family because I knew how they were. Judgmental.
Loud.
Obsessed with appearances. They always wanted to remind me that I wasn't like them. That I didn't own luxury handbags or wear silk. That I didn't have a husband, a designer kitchen, or a dog named Bentley. But what I had was bigger. See, 3 weeks before that reunion, I found something, an old listing online. A small commercial plot in a part of town no one paid attention to anymore. Everyone thought that area was dying. But I didn't. I saw what others didn't. With trembling hands and all my savings in one envelope, I made an offer. It was all I had. The seller? An old man who was tired of holding on to it. He accepted on one condition: I had to promise not to resell it to a developer.
I signed.
I own something now. Not just land.
Opportunity.
Power. A future. So when I arrived at the reunion, wearing the same heels I'd worn for 5 years, they only saw what they wanted to see. But not what they should have. And as I stood by the edge of the buffet table, my aunt came over. Loud, sharp, laced with venom. Zoya, darling, you always look so grounded. She meant poor. My cousin snorted. You're still renting, right? I didn't respond. I didn't need to. But I did reach into my purse. Quietly. Slowly. And then I placed it on the table in front of all of them. The real estate contract. With my name. My signature. My initials. The total amount paid in full. And the location. Their laughter stopped like someone cut the music. My sister's jaw tightened. My aunt blinked, trying to read the bold print. That's when I spoke.
Come.
I didn't bring a gift today. I brought proof. The silence? Delicious. But the best was yet to come. Because what none of them knew was why I bought that land. The silence after I laid that contract down wasn't just quiet, it was thick. Heavy. The kind of silence that makes your heart pound louder in your ears than anything else. My cousin Zara, who'd just gotten back from a luxury honeymoon in Dubai, leaned in and read the address again. This is that weird area by the old train station, isn't it? She scoffed. Why would you buy that? I looked at her.
Steady. Calm.
Because I see value where others see trash. She blinked. My aunt looked away. My sister's smile began to twitch. But none of them knew the truth yet. None of them had any idea what I'd been working on. See, the property wasn't just land. It was steps away from a government-approved development project that had just passed in council. A new community center. A bus terminal. A tech office. I'd gone to every town hall meeting, read every public document, sat through boring talks no one wanted to sit through. They didn't know I had partnered with a silent investor who believed in my vision. They didn't know I'd already hired an architect. They didn't know that the place they mocked me for investing in was about to become one of the hottest commercial zones in the city. But before I could say anything more, my uncle raised his glass and tapped it with his spoon. "Let's settle down, everyone," he said loudly, clearly noticing the growing tension. "We're here to celebrate family, not throw shade."
I smiled at that.
Through shade? I hadn't even begun. Still, I stayed quiet. Not because I was scared, but because I wanted them to think, to sit in their discomfort. As the evening moved on, little things started to shift. My cousin who never used to greet me suddenly asked what bank I used. My aunt offered me wine. She never offered me anything before. My sister, who used to ignore my texts, slid closer, trying to joke about how cool it was that I got into real estate. I didn't give them much. Just small nods. A polite smile here and there. But inside, I was watching everything. Not out of revenge. Not out of spite. But because I'd been forgotten for too long. Over dessert, someone clinked their glass again. This time it was my sister. She stood up. "I just want to say, Zoya, it's nice to see you doing something with your life." A few polite chuckles. Some nods. But my heart, it cracked a little. Something with my life? Like the 3 jobs I worked didn't matter. Like staying afloat while depressed and alone wasn't a whole life. I stood up too. Not loud. Not angry. Just real. I never stopped doing something with my life. I just did it where none of you were looking. Silence again. Then I pulled something else out of my bag. A black and white printed image. The architectural render of the commercial strip being built. My name, stamped at the bottom as a co-owner. Someone gasped. I didn't even look to see who. Instead, I added, "In 6 months, that land will be worth 5 times what I paid. And I'll be renting offices to companies who wouldn't even return my emails last year." And then I looked directly at my sister. "Oh, and you remember that place you wanted to open your boutique in, on Kingston Avenue? One of the buildings going up is on that street. I'll let you know the rent price when it's done." I didn't say it with a smirk. I didn't spit it like venom. I said it like truth. Because that's what it was. The truth. And the truth didn't need to be cruel to sting. After I sat down, the room didn't return to normal. The background music felt awkward now. People weren't chatting as freely. I could feel it all shift, like a rope quietly pulling the balance of power. My uncle cleared his throat again. "That's impressive, Zoya." "Really?" He gave a stiff nod, as if it hurt his neck to say it. I nodded back. "Thank you." But I wasn't there to humiliate them. That was never the plan. What they didn't know was that the night before, I had stood outside the newly fenced property. It was just gravel and dust now. But in a few weeks, the team would break ground. And a few days after the reunion, I'd be sitting down with the city's mayor. Not because I was anyone famous, but because I'd proposed a low-rent workspace for local startups on the first floor of one of the new buildings. Something the city council loved. It would create jobs, uplift others, change the reputation of that entire neighborhood. And in that moment at the dinner table, none of them knew that the nobody they'd all mocked for years had slowly become someone who could call a councilman and get a call back in less than an hour. But what shook them the most came next. One of the guests walked in late. A tall man in a navy blazer, silver hair, kind eyes. The mayor. Everyone turned. Some even stood. My aunt nearly dropped her wine glass. "Apologies for the delay," he said. "I was hoping to catch Zoya before she left."
"Zoya?"
My sister blinked, so hard I thought her lashes might fall off. The mayor walked straight to me and shook my hand. "Your design submission is being reviewed next week. City's buzzing about it." I stood slowly, my fingers calm in his. "Thank you for coming, sir. I wasn't expecting you here." "I owed you the courtesy," he said, loud enough for the room to hear. "You're doing more for that part of the city than most developers with triple your budget." That moment, it didn't feel real. Not because I didn't believe I deserved it, but because the Zoya who used to sit in the back of the room during family dinners, picking at mashed potatoes while everyone else talked over her, that Zoya had never imagined this version of herself would be seen, respected, even admired. After the mayor left, a strange thing happened. My cousins started treating me differently, not fake nice, not sweet, but careful, like they were afraid to say the wrong thing now.
It didn't matter to me.
Because I wasn't chasing approval anymore. That night, before I left, my sister pulled me aside. "Zoya," she said quietly, "I'm sorry. We didn't know you were doing all this." I studied her face. There was no makeup hiding her insecurity now.
Just her, raw.
"I didn't do it to prove anything to you," I said gently. "I did it because I got tired of waiting for a life I deserved." Then I smiled softly. "But I'm glad you see it now." Her eyes welled up, and for a second, the proud, sharp sister I grew up with looked small. "I'm pregnant," she whispered. "I want my kid to look up to people like you." That hit me in the gut. I wasn't ready for that. I reached out, placed a hand on her shoulder, then stopped laughing at the people who build from nothing. Because one day, your kid might be one of them. We hugged. Not a dramatic movie hug, but one that trembled.
Real.
By the time I walked outside, the night air had cooled. The streetlights flickered on. I looked up at the sky and whispered to myself, "You did it, Zoya. And you didn't have to become cruel to get here." I didn't need to shout or destroy anyone. I just needed to build. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was restless. Not because of the adrenaline from the mayor showing up. But because I'd finally let go of something that had been buried in my chest for too long. The need to prove myself. I laid on my mattress, the same one I'd bought secondhand 5 years ago, and stared at the ceiling. It had a crack that danced like a branch in the wind. I used to look at it and wonder if I'd ever escape this life. Not escape in a dramatic way, but simply outgrow it. And I had. The next morning, I got up early and made tea with the last of the loose leaves I'd been saving for months. I didn't scroll through my phone. I didn't post anything online. I just stood by the small window and watched the sun rise through the city's concrete. Then my phone buzzed. A message. From my cousin Omar. The same cousin who once said I looked too plain to ever make it in life. "Omar, hey. Saw the mayor posted a pic with you. That's amazing. I was wondering if we could grab coffee sometime. I've been thinking about investing. Maybe you could guide me?" I stared at the message. And for a split second, I wanted to say something petty. Remind him of the time he laughed when I said I wanted to build something of my own. But I didn't. Because I remembered what it felt like, being on the other side. Being the one who wanted a chance but didn't know how to ask for it. So I replied, "Zoya, sure.
Let's talk next week."
Then I turned off my phone. It wasn't just Omar. Over the next 3 days, I got more messages. From family, old friends, people who hadn't spoken to me in years. Some just wanted to catch up. Others were blunt, asking how I pulled it off. But I didn't reply to all. I replied to a few. The ones who once showed me kindness, even when I had nothing to give. I remembered one moment in particular, years ago at a different family event when I was still trying to hold myself together after losing my job. I'd spilled tea on my scarf, and everyone had laughed except one person, my late grandfather. He had taken off his own handkerchief and gently dabbed the stain, then leaned in and whispered, "The loudest ones usually carry the least. Just keep building, Zoya. One brick at a time." That moment came back to me like a wave. I missed him, more now than ever, because he was the only one who ever believed I'd turn out just fine. That night, I visited his grave, a quiet spot under an old neem tree at the edge of town. I didn't bring flowers, just silence. I knelt down and said, "You were right, Nana. I built it, and I didn't have to beg or shout or pretend. I just kept going." The wind moved softly around me, a warm breeze in an otherwise chilly evening. When I stood up, I didn't feel alone anymore. 2 weeks passed. Then, something I hadn't expected happened. I got invited to speak, publicly, at a local women's entrepreneurship event. The mayor's team had recommended me. At first, I panicked. What would I even say? That I used to cry in grocery store aisles because I couldn't afford pasta? That I once skipped dinner so I could pay for a cheap online course in business planning? But I agreed. And when the day came, I stood in front of 60 women, some older than me, some younger, most holding notebooks and wide eyes. I told them the truth. All of it. I wasn't born into wealth, I said, voice clear but shaking. I wasn't even born into kindness, but I had grit.
And a dream.
And I was tired of waiting for someone to hand me a seat at the table. So I built a folding chair. And when they laughed, I added a cushion and sat anyway. The applause didn't come immediately. It came after the silence. The kind of silence that means people are feeling something. Afterward, a young girl came up and hugged me. "I'm gonna try too," she whispered. That was the moment. The real one. The one that mattered more than any family reunion or Instagram post. Because now, I wasn't just building something for myself. I was showing others how to build too. A month later, the old plot of land I'd purchased was no longer just dirt and wire fencing. Machinery had moved in. The billboard went up, right at the entrance of the site. Future home of Kingston Heights, commercial spaces by Zoya M. Khan. I stood across the street that morning, clutching a coffee cup with trembling hands. Not because I was scared, but because I was finally witnessing a dream take form in steel and stone. People walked by and stared. Some even stopped to read. One man muttered, "Didn't know this area was getting developed." And all I could do was smile. Then something strange happened. Later that week, my aunt called me. Actually called me. Not a message. Not a forwarded meme. A call. I answered. "Zoya," she said, "there's a fundraiser next weekend. At the same venue we held the reunion. Would you like to come?" I hesitated. "I don't want to impose," I said softly. She paused. "You wouldn't be. I actually hoped you'd speak. Share a little about your journey." That part hit different. My aunt, the one who used to judge me for my thrift store heels, now wanted me to speak at a room full of well-dressed, big-talking family friends. I agreed. But what I didn't tell her was that I'd already bought the building where they were hosting the event.
Yes.
The same one with chandeliers and marble floors. See, during one of my early meetings with a property manager downtown, I'd found out the owner of that building was retiring and wanted out. The price was steep, but I had just secured my first funding round from a private investor who believed in my clean tech co-working initiative. We bought it. Quietly. Legally.
Cleanly.
And I didn't tell a soul. Not even when I walked into the building that day and the receptionist smiled and said, "Welcome, Miss Khan." My aunt noticed the greeting, but didn't say anything.
Not yet.
The fundraiser was crowded. Hundreds of people in glittering gowns and crisp suits. The energy was loud, vibrant, competitive. But when they introduced me on stage, the tone shifted. I walked up, wearing the same color dress they once mocked me for, deep blue. Only this time, it was custom-tailored. And I stood taller. Not because I was proud, but because I'd earned the right to be. I told the audience about growing up in a household where silence was safer than opinion. About the years I lived off boiled rice and instant coffee. I told them about rejection, doubt, and the sting of being underestimated by the people you love most. Then I shared something I'd never said aloud before. My grandfather once told me, "Build slow, build smart, and they'll never see you coming." And he was right, because I didn't scream to be noticed. I just worked until the noise couldn't drown me anymore. There was a pause. Then soft applause. Then louder. And louder. When I stepped off stage, a woman in pearls came up to me. "I'd like to lease space in one of your upcoming properties. My son's starting a business. You inspire him." I smiled. "Send me an email." But the moment that really stayed with me was when my sister approached. She looked at me with tears in her eyes and said, "You became everything we never had the courage to be." I hugged her, not out of triumph, but out of forgiveness. "Then maybe," I whispered, "we can start having that courage now." As the event wrapped up and guests trickled out, my aunt walked over. She glanced around the space, then at me. "You bought this place, didn't you?" I didn't deny it. She nodded, then laughed softly. "I guess we owe you rent now." I looked at her. Steady.
You don't owe me anything.
Just stop teaching your kids that someone is worth less because they have less.
She didn't say anything.
Just nodded.
Slowly.
Outside, I stood beneath the building's tall arch.
My name wasn't on it.
No flashy signs.
No spotlight.
But in every corner of that room, I was known now. Not because I shouted. Not because I got revenge. Because I kept showing up when no one believed I could. Because I built. Because I stayed kind, even when I was dismissed. And because when they finally saw me, I was already 10 steps ahead. They mocked me at the reunion, laughed when I walked in with secondhand shoes. But now, they walk on floors I own. And I didn't get here by proving them wrong. I got here by proving myself right.